Welcome back to the Jamie Ross Show. I'm very happy to have in studio with me today the editor of Life of Pi, Tim Squyres. Tim, welcome to the set. If some of you are not familiar with Tim's work, Tim has been working with Ang Lee for the last 20 years. Among the titles he's worked on with Ang have been Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, The Ice Storm, Sense and Sensibility, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and of course The Life of Pi, Rachel Getting Married, Taking Woodstock, and he also did The Hulk, and he did Gosford Park with Robert Altman.
Yes.
So let's go back and where you started your editing career. I believe it was at Cornell.
Yeah, I did. I was a teaching assistant at Cornell many years ago, and then one of my students came to NYU, and so when I moved to New York, I wound up cutting his film, and then a bunch of other people's films. I also did camera, did all kinds of things. So I gravitated toward editing. I thought I was going to do camera, but editing, you actually get to kind of tell the whole story in a way that very few people in the movies do.
Right.
Turned out that seemed to be the right thing to do. So
and your work is really proven. Now let's just get to the bare bones and have people kind of understand a general overview of what editing, what it is you do, what it is you get, and how you create the movie.
Yeah, I think people have a sense that an editor, my job is to take away the bad stuff. But when they shoot a movie, a 2-hour movie, they'll give me 100 or 200 hours of stuff. Right. And then I have to make it into a movie. Mm-hmm. The first time through, I get it scene by scene as they shoot it, because if they start shooting on Monday, I start cutting on Tuesday. And the director's still shooting. So the first cut of the movie I do by myself.
Wow.
I show the director versions. I usually do multiple versions of everything, and I try out a lot of things. But that first cut I do alone because the director's busy shooting the movie. And then after I do a screener first assembly, which is my first cut, which I've done by myself, then the director and I sit together for as long as it takes to finish the movie.
Yeah, and I was trying to explain this to some people about I saw you at SOPAC a few years ago, and I think you had a clip of Sense and Sensibility.
Yeah.
And I was the one who asked the question. You had the table scene, all these people sitting around the table, and what you don't realize is that it's one camera shot at a time. Is that right, or did they have two cameras?
On Sensibility, a couple times we had two, but usually it was just one.
Yeah.
And so you do it over and over and over again from many different angles.
Right. So that scene, that whole table scene, was performed 20 times, or as many times as
certainly
more
more
people.
than that. Yeah.
So and that's a kind of that's what people don't understand. I think you see a movie, and I think your job is to make the movie look as though it was filmed all at once. Is that kind of a fair...
and it looks make it look coherent, but at the same time get to see everything you want to see that helps tell the story. Right. So sometimes this person's line is important, but then what's important is this person's reaction to that line, and so you want to hear them do that, and then this person's talking, and you cut around, and if you do it well, all those cuts look like they're all there for a reason. Right. They're giving you something new, and therefore you don't feel like you're watching something that's all cut up, even though there might be lots of cuts in it.
Yeah, and I was watching a little of Crouching Tiger last night, and some of those scenes are just amazing. I mean, was that the most complicated movie you had to date?
Most technical in terms of the action scenes. I mean, the hard part of Crouching Tiger was the dialogue scenes.
Okay.
The action scenes were very precise and very technical. Some of those scenes, it took them 2 weeks to shoot. And I have 200 setups. That is 200 different camera positions, and then often many takes of each.
Right.
So it's a huge amount of stuff to kind of pick through, but then I can usually cut those pretty quickly. The hard part was the bigger storytelling things.
I see.
Arranging the scenes, what to drop, how to make the dialogue scenes work. That's really what took us the most time.
Yeah, and it helps to have actors who have the ability to fly.
Yes.
Which
yes.
was very.
Yes. By the way, Crouching Tiger was assembled. The first cut during production was assembled in Maplewood.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's very cool. And so you met Ang 20 years ago. How did you two meet?
The first film I had done, which is a little film directed by a guy named Mark Levin, who's a very accomplished documentary director who grew up in Maplewood, which I found out after I got the job.
Okay.
The first assistant director on that film was a guy named Ted Hope, who then started a production company, and they were producing Ang Lee's first movie. And so he said, oh, I know some guy who might work for cheap.
Wow. And that was turned out pretty good.
Yeah.
Has he worked with other with the same, has it been a group of you for the last 20 years?
There's a producer, James Seamus, who's Ted's partner at Good Machine. James has been involved in many of Ang's films. There are a number of people who came on with Ice Storm in '96 who have been some sound people who have been with him ever since. But
okay.
But I've done all his films except for Brokeback Mountain, which
there
was a scheduling conflict. He promised me he wasn't going to do another movie for a year,
okay.
and so I committed to Syriana, and then that came up.
Oh, he committed to Syriana.
Committed to another movie, and
yeah, that was a tough movie.
Yeah,
I remember it. So is it these movies? Is it? All of them are such award-winning status. I mean, you have so many that were up for awards. Is it the directing? Is it the story? I mean, is he just picking the right stories, or is it just a combination, or is it all the editing?
It's all the editing. No, he picks the right stories and then he does it well.
Yeah.
The great thing about working with Ang is you don't do the same movie over and over again. They're all different and they're all something new.
Right.
He's drawn to the same kind of stories thematically, but in terms of setting and style, they're very different.
Right.
But yeah, he's a good filmmaker and he chooses his material carefully.
Yeah, yeah. And so this movie, it was quite a project to finally get done. I mean, it sounded like he said this was the one movie he was worried about might not happen. Well,
it took a long time to get this film, get it going, to get it greenlit.
Yeah.
They had been through, 3 other directors had taken a whack at it before Ang did. They had been trying to get this film made for 10 years.
Right.
And other directors, to varying degrees, but they had actually gotten close to shooting at one point. But it's tough. It's essentially the book. It's about theology and philosophy. It's not an adventure story. I mean, it's a philosophical discussion wrapped around an adventure story. But it kind of reads like an art movie, and you don't usually make vastly expensive art movies. But the only way to do this movie, you couldn't do this movie inexpensively, because the things that we need our tiger to do and other animals, you can't do with real animals. You have to do in CG, and therefore you have to do an absolutely photorealistic CG animal, which nobody's ever done before. So it wasn't clear that the film could get made, that it just made budget sense, and you could come up with a plan that would work. And we were the first people who actually came up with a plan that looked like it was going to work, and it did.
Yeah, I don't. When I read the book, I think I even thought then, there's so much imagination and so much it'd be hard to make a movie out of, and I think is pulled off perfectly. And I'd like to go see it again. It's really good. Was it tricky for you? This was your first 3D movie.
Yeah, a lot of films that have been released in 3D, they've cut in 2D. And then the 3D kind of happens at the end. Either they shoot in 3D but cut in 2D and release in 3D, or they shoot in 2D and then post-convert it. We shot in 3D and decided very early on that I would do everything in 3D. Right. So from assembling the first dailies to finished film, I worked only in 3D,
Wow.
and I didn't even see the film in 2D until until about a month before we finished. It was the first time I saw the movie in 2D.
Wow. Yeah.
3D was really the way we thought about it the whole time, but that meant I had to work with 3D glasses on all day for almost 2 years.
And then that 3D editing studio, where was that? Was that over?
Well, initially New York.
Mm-hmm.
New York and Taiwan. We shot it in Taiwan, and I went back and while we were shooting, I went back and forth between New York and Taiwan.
Uh-huh.
And then once we finished, we came back to New York. We're here for 10 months.
Okay.
On 27th Street, and then we moved to Los Angeles, and we spent 6 months there finishing it.
Yeah. So as it's being shot, or are you on set?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah. When I was in Taiwan, where it's a fantastic location, is in the city of Taichung, which is on the west coast of Taiwan, and there's the old municipal airport was there, kind of in the city, and they closed it down a few years ago and built a new, bigger one.
Okay.
And so our location was the airport. Our sound stages were in terminals. We built a wave tank, big wave tank, 90-meter wave tank that we dug on the tarmac there, right outside of the terminal building, which is where our offices were. So and our tiger pens were right next to that too. So I was back and forth between the wave tank and the tiger pen where the second unit was shooting, and the editing room all the time when I was there.
So when you're on set, do you have any say in the shots? Is there any?
We work out the shots a lot beforehand. Shooting in 3D is hard. Shooting on water is notoriously hard.
Right.
So you can't just kind of go in and wing it. And shooting with all the visual effects is hard. You need a plan. So we had a very thorough plan for what we were going to shoot beforehand. But often things came up, and then Ang would call me out, and we'd talk about it. I was there, but the decisions about how to shoot it, a lot of that happened before the day we were actually shooting.
Right.
Much more so than on a usual film.
Right. And like when you're editing this, do you have the whole storyboard in front of you, or is
no? I mean, on this film we did something called a previs, which is like a moving storyboard. It's you actually would shoot the movie in the computer, in 3D software, and plan out all the shots that way. But once they shoot it and give it to me, I ignore the previs. Because I work with what they give me, and sometimes there aren't, because of the limitations of shooting, we didn't cover it as many different ways as we normally would. So sometimes there weren't really a lot of different choices about how to structure the scene.
Okay.
But I never, would feel constrained by following exactly what the previs was. And often we didn't shoot the previs, so I couldn't follow it anyway.
I see, and I also heard that his initial hope for the film was about 2.5 hours. I think.
We wound up shorter than that.
Yeah. So were you involved on figuring out how to make it shorter?
Yeah.
I mean that's
my job. It was really good around 220, 225.
Yeah.
We never thought we'd get it down. We're at 2. I mean, we were 159 plus credits.
Wow.
It's a process with the studio.
Yeah.
It's very tricky with a film like this where somebody's lost at sea. There's not a strong story pulling you through it.
Right.
There's a bunch of stuff, and then the ship goes down, and then you're drifting at sea, just reacting to whatever happens for a long time. Right. And you don't want your audience to feel like they're just drifting. You want to feel like there's a plot taking you through. How much stuff, but it also means a lot of that stuff you can take out because it's not crucial to the story development. There's some very good scenes that aren't in the movie. Which will be on the DVD.
Which will be on the DVD.
There's some others that won't be on the DVD, but there's quite a bit more, and some of it was quite good.
Yeah.
And you could make the case either way for whether some of it should have stayed in the movie or not.
Right. Well, I'll get the DVD because I'm very curious to see what got cut. And I did see where Ang was saying that he's not doing the director's cut, but he does do deleted scenes in general. And the tiger and all the effects were there in your edit. You didn't have to imagine.
Yeah, when they shoot the film, what they give me is we shot it in a wave tank in Taiwan. So there's no sky, there's no ocean past, there's water, to 20 feet past the boat, and that's it.
Yeah.
And there's no tiger.
Wow.
And there's no flying fish. There's no nothing. So while I was assembling the film, we got the company that did the previs. We had them give us the animation, but lift the animation out of the previs. Just give us just the tiger. Mm-hmm. And so we would comp the tiger into our shots. Okay. So that we could tell the story, and we would also put in backgrounds. Some of the more complicated shots where the camera's moving around a lot and it's very hard to track, we gave back to them, and they post-vised. We call it this post-viz now. Okay. That we're putting in tiger and we're putting in background before the visual effects people have started. So none of it is done by Rhythm and Hues, which is our real visual effects vendor. Mm-hmm. But it's so that we can tell the story. Because you can't, it's very hard to sit and watch and think you're watching a story when one of your characters isn't there. Yeah. So we only had in the first assembly, which is my first cut, which we screened about 2 weeks after they finished shooting. Mm-hmm. There were only a couple of shots where you could see the walls of the wave tank. Mm-hmm. Right at the end of the shoot, and everything with animals had animals in it. I also had a 3D model that I could put in and just kind of move around.
Oh yeah. Because I remember I think you're showing when he had the Toget Silpak when he did the Hulk. A lot of the Hulk was just like a blob. Like they gave me a model of just the Hulk standing like this, and had it rotating around, and from above. From even and from below, and then using that on green, I could then move it around and block him that way. And I had the same thing with jets and helicopters and the various things. Because that one I didn't have any animation. I wasn't getting any help from anybody. We had to do that ourselves. Right. So, but we blocked everything out pretty thoroughly. Yeah. Wow. And let's see. Here's a part that. We might have to make it at the end of this. It could be a spoiler, but there's been some discussion on Maplewood Online about the meaning of the movie. Okay. Is there a specific meaning, or is it up to the viewer's interpretation?
It's an interesting thing with the book. Mm-hmm. What the meaning of the book, I think we've stayed quite faithful, of the movie, I think we stayed quite faithful to the book. Yeah. But people interpret the book all kinds of different ways, which actually I think frustrates the author a little bit. Yeah. Because it deals with theology, people tend to see it through the lens of what they bring in with them. Right. They see it through the glasses that they wore into the theater. Right. And so you can interpret it a number of different ways. We were aware of that, and we didn't want to pin down and say this is exactly what you must take away from the movie. So yes, we're okay with leaving it a bit open, but that was something we struggled with a lot. There was quite a while where we felt we weren't making the end clear enough, and we went through to great lengths to try to address that. Yeah, and hopefully. It's, as I said, it's fundamentally not an adventure story. Right. It's a theological discussion wrapped around an adventure story. Yeah. And I hope, our hope is that people think about that and talk about that. Yeah, and it's, you kind of have the story makes it tough, the 3D makes it tough also, I feel, because not for the movie, but for getting it out there, because it's taken the 3D projector. When I tried to see Life of Pi, it was always at the 1 o'clock show, and it sounded like it's a kids movie or something like that. So I just wonder if that helped or hurt. Like, are people expecting the big 3D action thing? Yeah, our hope is to give them something different from what they've come to expect from 3D. I mean, that was, we didn't do 3D to have big action stuff doing this.
Right.
It's to make it an immersive experience, and it seems that audiences have appreciated that what we're doing with 3D is a little bit different. We were kind of skeptical about 3D. I didn't really had to get talked into it.
Okay.
It wasn't our idea. It was the studio's idea initially, and we saw a lot of 3D movies, good ones and bad ones, before we started, and thought a lot about why, how it would help this story and why we would put ourselves through the misery of shooting it in 3D, which is hard. It slows things down, and we knew that we'd compromise on coverage to do that. But we decided to do it for the, for the experience, the immersive experience that we wanted to get.
Well, it came out fantastic, and I'm hoping it'll come up for a lot of awards. We'll see. Those come out when? Do you know when the nominations come out? Is that early next year?
Yeah, it's late January.
Is it late January?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just really curious to see what happens. And how has the editing been like through the years? Has it? Do you have to relearn new programs like every year? Does it keep?
It always changes. The first couple of films I cut on film with the splicer.
Right.
I was a very early adopter in cutting digitally. We cut The Wedding Banquet digitally in 1992, so that's very early. Yeah. But at that point, I'm using the same program now, but then it came on 5 floppy disks, and now it's a 3 gigabyte program.
Was that Avid?
Avid Media Composer, yeah. So it's very, very different. But you learn it, and you can use it at whatever level you feel comfortable.
And probably 92. Which one was that?
The Wedding Banquet.
Wedding. It probably wasn't 44 teragigs.
No. No. We our Unity, our storage on this movie, we wound up with 60 terabytes.
60.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we covered a lot of the bases there, and thanks again for coming in. And Tim lives in Maplewood.
Yep.
And you've been here
25 years.
25 years. Wow.
24. That's almost exactly 25.
And a lot of the movies that you see are edited right here in Maplewood.
A few.
A few of them.
Recent ones, yeah.
Yeah, and if you need someone extra to help you out, give me a ring.
Okay.
And thanks again. And if you haven't seen the movie, you really need to see it. It's phenomenal. See it in 3D. I saw it. SoPac had it. Maybe they still have it.
It's in SoPac. It's in Millburn. It's not in Maplewood.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So go and see it, and you can hop on Maplewood online and give your view of what the film is about.
That's exactly what you're trying to say.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thanks again.
Yep.
All right. Cool.